Hello, everyone. Hope you had a good Christmas, good holiday season, and a good New Year. I want to talk today about this idea of patterns in a stream. Um, I like to hike and camp, and occasionally I find myself next to a beautiful river like this, and I like to sit down and just observe it for a good long while. I like watching the patterns, the eddies, the currents, the ripples, the little waterfalls, the still pools. To see the patterns that are present and kind of appreciate their state of permanence, but also knowing that there's water flowing through it, so it's not both temporary and permanent at the same time. It's kind of a paradox. Now, obviously, it's a little bit turbulent, so it's not, you know, it's a little chaotic, but an even better example of this idea that I'm trying to explain here is laminar flow. This is where, under certain conditions, water will flow and it looks like a solid object. Basically, the inside of the water stream is flowing a bit faster than the outside, and it'll look like how you see there, where there's a pattern on the surface. It doesn't move, but it still has certain properties that look permanent, like certain colors, certain shapes. But when you touch it, as they did there in the video, you can see it's still flowing water. Related to this concept here, I'm trying to explain is the ship of Theseus. It's a thought experiment, a paradox. It says essentially there's an old ship and it gets older, and as it gets older, they start replacing the planks and the mast and the sail, whatever components make up that ship, they gradually replace it until one day there's nothing left of the original. Everything in that ship is all new pieces. So the question is raised here: is that the ship of Theseus? Is it still the same ship? And a corollary is, okay, well, if you took the old parts that you took out, made another ship out of the old parts, is that too the ship of Theseus? Bit of a paradox. Now you have two ships that are what? They're not the same identity. But the general pattern here is that the general idea here is the same pattern that where the components are being replaced, but the identity in theory is the same. Here's a bit of a close-up so you can see that the idea of replacing parts over time. Also related to this thought is the idea of cell turnover in our own bodies. So when I originally got going with this thought, I was thinking like, well, I've heard that the body gets replaced once every 7 years on average. So that's kind of interesting. So I started looking into that and actually doing research. I found out it wasn't quite 100% true. There's certain aspects like your eye, the lens of your eyes, the neurons in your brain, and your heart muscles, the cells there are not replaced. You keep those throughout your entire life, but 85 to 90% of your body does get replaced in about 10 years. So you live to be 80, your 90% of your body has been replaced like 8 times. It's kind of interesting. So where am I going with this? The concept of identity. You know, who am I? Who are you? When I was younger, I'd be very physical in my focus or my interpretation of the world. I'd say, well, I'm me. I'm right here. I'm very physical. This is my body, and I'm Casey, right? Who are you? And I'd maybe shake your hand or something, right? But as I just proved, at least to myself, that most of my body gets replaced, so I can't really identify with that. It's just like a pattern in the stream. So as I go deeper on this, okay, what are some things that are permanent? They're not temporary or ephemeral. What what's true no matter what? Well, you go a little deeper, I think of things like, okay, well, especially in American culture, people ask, hey, what do you do? Oh, I work at such and such a place. I have this role or this position, or like, oh, I like, I have family, I have kids, or I have these hobbies. I have to go hiking or skiing or knitting or whatever those hobbies are. You try to find those labels to describe you, describe yourself to others, or maybe even to you. Maybe identify with those labels. But those two are temporary. You may lose a job, you may get a divorce, you may pick up new hobbies, start a new focus on life. Okay, well, okay, I get it. Those are things that you do, right? Okay, what about your personality traits? Okay, well, okay, you could say things like, oh, I'm kind, I care about others, I'm disciplined, whatever labels you want to describe. You could maybe describe your personality in that way. That's maybe getting a little bit closer to something that's permanent. But there's certain days you're in a bad mood and you're not so kind, or certain days where you're tired and you don't go work out, or you're stressed and you eat more than you think is not disciplined, or whatever. So certain days are off. Those labels didn't necessarily apply that well that day. So that those labels, those two are temporary. Let's go a little deeper into the identity. What am I? Am I just some kind of I'm more than those labels, but okay, well, what about like I know I can think. It's true. I think, therefore I am. So okay, but I'm not just my thoughts. I'm not just the mental mind. I have feelings, I have emotions, I have knowing, intuition, still the physicality, perhaps a spiritual focus. All right, go a little deeper. Awareness. Maybe I'm just awareness. A little better. Some days I'm not too aware though. Like maybe I'll be distracted, not fully present, or not in the moment. I am consciousness. That's pretty good. So it kind of encompasses a lot of those ideas. But I could also say I am existence, or I exist. Seems permanent so far. Hope it remains true. I exist. I know I exist. If I didn't exist, I wouldn't be able to have anything happening. I wouldn't be thinking these thoughts or be able to talk to you. But even those things are a little bit limited because they exclude other things, such as like if I'm saying I exist, well, it's also not calling out the fact that I also am conscious and I'm aware. When I really go to the deepest core, the phrase that I land on is I am. It's a very simple phrase, but it also has a sense of wholeness, completion, expansiveness. It's a phrase that doesn't need to be propped up, doesn't need to be explained, doesn't need to be labeled. Simply, I am. So the next time you're labeling yourself good or bad or limiting yourself, return to your core, return to your center, and think about the phrase, I am. Thanks.